is the biblical God evil? And is that true? It's a interesting topic. I think that the God I believe in isn't short of cash or humor. And I think that it is important that we discuss it, because a lot of people, oh, we must fear God. We must fear. God strikes a deep and long, broad swath of
death and destruction on earth. If you read the Bible, it's pretty prevalent in there, and they are always in want of gold. I don't know. I think if I would to believe in a God, it would be a funny God. I mean, just like we were talking about earlier, if you go to the park and you see a nice stretch of green grass, oh, you think you can walk on that? Bam, thorn. I mean, that's funny.
It is funny. And there are a lot of things that are just funny in this world, and we have to be light and have some humor. And if we are made in the image of God, according to some religions, then, and we have humor, why wouldn't God be humorous? Yeah, see, like that dog barking. Kind of funny. I mean, does God not think that's funny?
I mean, you would have to think so. I mean, really, if we are made in the image of God and we all have a sense of humor.
Let's burn some cities down.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's funny to some people.
Apparently right now, yes.
It's a very interesting topic, because we've had very serious discussions out here with very serious-minded religious people that really strongly believe in the fear of God from the Old Testament. And most people like to say, oh, I've read the Bible, I know it. Well, they haven't read the Bible, most of them. And the Old Testament God is pretty violent. He doesn't hold back. But if we are made in the image of God, he must have smiled during that, torturing Job. He must have had a good time with that.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
It's not really a hard one. I mean, if you go back and read it, I mean, there is Satan there at the council of gods.
Going to and fro, yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to and fro. And even Satan says, hey, God, why don't you back up? That's a little bit much. And Satan's like, come on, like, ease up. I'm supposed to be the bad guy over here. And God's like, oh, you thought that was good? Wait till you see this. I mean, and that's true. If you read the book of Job, God does say that. Like, what, you thought that was bad? Wait, spoiler alert.
Yeah, and what the scribe forgot to say is that God just told Satan, he's like, hey, hold my beer and watch this. I mean, that's exactly what was happening. Yeah, so what's your take? You think, I mean, God said he was reveling in his own evil.
I'm still confused why Satan's still going to the council of God. I still don't know why Satan's in the garden. At the beginning, the sacred place of Eden, like, it's so sacred that they get kicked out and they can't return, but Satan's up in there.
Or why is there
So evil can exist in the Garden of Eden, but Satan's in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of contradictions that I think it is important, and one of the things that we do here is attempt to understand various religions so we can find truth for ourselves. And whatever you do, study the religions, and in this case we're talking about the Old Testament. Wow, is there some really strange contradictions that make you wonder, how do you believe that? If you've actually studied it and read it, it is confusing to the logical intellectual mind. And then if you think about it on an emotional and spiritual level, you're like, man, this just doesn't make any sense. How can the great creator, the beloved, infinite intelligence, have that kind of evil in his heart and revel in it? Like, wow.
I've seen different videos of people trying to talk about why there's like all that calamity going on in the Old Testament. Like, some say, like, well, he was king over the Israelites, so he has to protect his people from, like, and then you have the theory of the Canaanites and all them Amalekites being tainted with the Genesis 6 narrative of fallen angels coming down and mixing the blood, making Nephilim. So they're saying, like, there was no pure blood, so the Israelites were only the pure blood people, so they had to wipe out all the other tribes because their blood was tainted.
See, but I can't.
You gotta have that theory, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but you can't buy that theory either. If you believe that there's a single one God, then you believe that he created everything. So he would have created the angels, which if you read the Bible, especially the Proverbs where it talks about that there's God, angels, humans, and then the beasts of the field and land and the flock of the air. So it goes in that order. So if God created the angels, if they mixed with his other creation, why would that be a bad thing? He created both of them. Maybe he didn't want them to intermingle, but he's also the Alpha and the Omega, so he knows what's going to happen before it happens. So he creates evil, then sends evil down. So who cares if he's king over this bloodline or king over that bloodline? If he creates everything, then the whole point in the whole sentence is moot, because he's creating things just to kill other things that he's created. There's no logic in that. So he's king over the Israelite people. He either did create all the people and did create everything, or he didn't. There's either one God that has evil streaks, good streaks, happy streaks, sad streaks. I mean, of course, if we're made in God's image, why wouldn't God get a little depressed? Why wouldn't he be a little angry? I mean, let's be honest.
Or does sin come and decay us? That's why we get depressed and all that. Or have we devolved over the years?
Maybe, but what is
It's the antediluvian age.
Maybe, but what is sin? Sin is subjective. Something good for you is bad for somebody else.
Why don't my wisdom teeth fit anymore, Trey?
Exactly.
I devolved.
I mean, but let's think about it. I mean, why?
I don't know.
They're very fun points to discuss, because a lot of people get really upset just about talking about the subject. If you're not a mainline believer in any particular religion, and you just happen to be dissecting it in a way to understand it, a lot of people get really, really upset about it. And that is I think something that has to be addressed in the whole human condition, is that we turn these different philosophies into such violent fervor that even if a conversation gets you fired up to try to find the truth, man, we got some problems with humanity that need to be addressed.
Even the different denominations, like, I had a conversation with a guy who's clearly charismatic, Pentecostal, and like, he was trying to tell me that tongues were real, and he was like, I was like, let me guess, I'm not going to go to heaven because I'm not saved because I don't have the Holy Spirit and I've never spoken tongues. And he's like, right. I was like, well, you know, like, these are people who, like, you know, I read the Bible. No, I read the Bible. Like, they always say that. But, like, you're sitting there quoting Corinthians, but you didn't, I think it's like Corinthians 14. It literally says the tongues are for the signs for the Jew, because the Jews needed signs. They didn't live by faith, they live by sight. That's why, like, you see all the disciples, they're Jewish people, they're doing miracles, they're doing signs and wonders. And even in Revelation, we go to that dispensation. The two witnesses that come back in Israel, they're Jewish people. They bring back signs and wonders for the Jews, because Revelation's for the Jew, the tribulation. Sorry, but you know, this guy's like, oh, you don't speak in tongues. I was like, it's for the Jew. It's right there, and it's a sign for the non-believer. So why are you speaking in tongues? Are you not a believer? That's my question to the Pentecostal. You're so gung-ho and you get so arrogant. I think speaking in tongues is arrogance like that. It's like, oh, you don't have the Holy Spirit, you don't have the sign of the Holy Spirit, you can't speak in tongues. But it's literally, read the Bible, it says it's a sign for the non-believer. So why are you speaking in tongues?
It's just an easy question. That all of these things are easy questions, like the Garden of Eden, just right out of the gate. If you eat of the tree of knowledge, the tree of knowledge, it's the tree of knowledge. You want them to be dumb.
Of course you want them to be dumb.
You want everybody to be dumb. That is wow. I mean, it seems like you would just question, what am I reading here, just from that one sentence.
But if you let's go back to Gutenberg, and when he invented the printing press, the Catholic Church got all up in arms about people, the average person, being able to read the Bible. Just like in the garden, the tree of knowledge, God didn't want his people to eat of it so they wouldn't know anything. So when you get to Gutenberg in the Bible, the church doesn't want people to be able to read the word. They want to tell you what the word is, just like God in the garden. He wants to tell you what's good and bad. He doesn't want you to know for yourself. If you can make your own choices, you're much harder to control. But if you don't know anything, if I'm the only light and I'm feeding you this information, it's much easier to control you. If you can read it for yourself, you can not only read it, but you can make your own conclusions. You can actually think, does this make logical sense? I know you've told me that this makes sense, but this doesn't add up. I mean, we talk about the snake in the garden, the tree of fruit and knowledge. All these questions are things that people should be discussing, and they should be talking to each other about, not just saying, oh, you can't talk about that.
Well, people get so offended, and that is with any religion. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Christianity, Judaism. Well, Buddhists probably don't get too upset about anything, but
it probably depends on because they have sex in Buddhism too.
Sure.
I mean, the first break in the Buddhist camp was, should monks be able to carry condiments from day to day? Because they can't carry food, but is it bad to carry condiments? One group said, no, you can carry salt and mustard or whatever you have. And the other one said, no. So that's your first split in Buddhism. And there's all kinds of different splits in every religion just like that. So, of course, Buddhists could get upset about this or that.
Yeah. Oh, Gandhi, he liked to test himself.
Yeah.
14-year-old girls.
Well, yeah, there's so many.
What if he was lay in the bed with like a kid?
Well, yeah.
I'm sure he didn't get sexually assaulted. That's kind of weird. But we're not canceling Gandhi, are we?
Well,
you might. It is a strange set of circumstances whenever we can't have open and honest discussions without being condescending or judgmental. We're just trying to figure out the truth for ourselves. So it requires living in this world with other humans that we have to examine why 1 billion people believe a certain line, another 1 billion believe in another line, because we live amongst them. They help write the laws that we have that govern our lives. And a lot of these rules and regulations and the restrictions of human spirit and freedom derive themselves directly from the 3 main religions of the world. So if we're not informed by it and study them to understand, what are we doing? We're just a bunch of sheep running through the field, going wherever the guy says go. And it's just like what Colton said a few minutes ago before we started the video was, the Bible's the dustiest book in the house, of everybody's house. It's everybody has one in the United States, practically, and nobody reads it, even though they say they read it.
Oh, yeah, that's so common.
That's just like virtue signaling or whatever else you do in today's time. That's nothing new. People have been doing it forever. I'm virtue signaling. I read the Bible. I'm so pious. You're not. It's just like you see the stars on TV. They're not really wearing masks in their house. Of course they're not. They're out doing whatever they want to do. They're telling you something that they're not doing all throughout the course of history. You think the Cardinals, look in ancient, I guess it's not too ancient, but look at Rome at the start of the Christian church. You think those cardinals are practicing celibacy? No, of course not. They had huge manors and mansions. They weren't giving up their worldly possessions. They had incomes from all their properties, and they had whatever they were into, boys, women, men. They had everything. They had servants. They weren't living pious. They were telling you that you need to give up your worldly possessions and you need to donate to the church, but they're making an income and taxation off their properties. And that's really common knowledge that you can look up very easily and see what the Pope's incomes are, or just the Cardinals' incomes.
The idea of Christianity is really nice, especially New Testament, because
the Gnostic version.
You believe in Jesus Christ, and you want to, and you're saved by grace, which is like a free gift, right? Just have faith in Jesus that you believe in him. Like, the water baptism doesn't save you to get to heaven. It's kind of more of a sign of obedience and symbolism of washing away. But
well, does it really? Is it really a good message? Because
well, yeah. I think about it, like when you believe in Christ, you want to kind of take off this fleshy desire. You need to die yourself. you die to yourself, you die to your earthly, worldly desires, like your sinful stuff, which isn't bad. I mean, why would you not want to, if you got lust in your heart or adultery in your heart, why would you not want to just make that go away? And, or meditate, pray to go that way. You want to, it's like in James, there's a transformation. Your speech is different. It should be evident. Like me professing that I'm a Christian doesn't matter. Someone has to see that you are. Like, oh man, Colton changed. He's nothing like he used to. And what happened? He believes in Jesus now. His tongue is different. Everything's different about him. I mean, what's so bad about that? And His grace, it's free. And
well, there's nothing bad about that.
and imagine, that's what I was saying about the Bible being dusty. Like, it'd be just funny in a sense. He's talking about God being funny. That the one thing, the answer out of here was literally a book that's lasted. It's going to outlast all of us. It's outlasted the Egyptian religion. It outlasted, people want to talk about Sumerians. No one's talking about Samaria. No one's talking about those people.
Well, they kind of are, because
well, they do still have the Bahavita and the Indian.
This penniless man from Bethlehem is more influential than anybody on this earth. And why is that? And just because some people have used him for bad doesn't mean Jesus endorsed that. That's you know what I mean?
Well, I think that you're right in saying that if you find some level of comfort, you are able to use that as a spiritual crutch, then, what's the harm?
But what I was going to say was, so you got that part, which is ideal. It's like, oh, that's very nice. Saved by grace. Even though I walk in the flesh sometimes, I'm still saved by grace because I have faith that I believe in Jesus Christ. But then you go, you look at the other part of the Bible and you go, whoa, who's this guy?
Yeah.
This is the same guy? And then you're like, 1,700 laws to follow just to get saved? I'm like, what? And then really, destroying a city? How do you get this guy to who destroyed this city, but he's long suffering? He annihilates these cities and these people, even the kids, the Canaanite kids and stuff like that. But then you have this guy who is the same guy. Maybe. Then he literally, that thought is weird. And then the fact that God is omnipresent, that He sent Himself down here to sacrifice Himself for you.
Well, you got to think about it on this scale of, okay, why do I send myself to go die for myself? Why do I?
Yeah, but for us.
And if you don't believe in me, Jesus, then you are going to go to hell. And what about all the other good people in the world? So you just send them to hell just because?
And what's the verse of don't cast your pearls with swine, as in they're not going to hear the gospel? Pretty much saying don't waste your time on them. It's like, whoa, that's a big deal though. It's like, hey man, I think there's a hell, dude. I think we got to go. I mean, we got to get out of the situation to keep us away from hell.
Yeah, maybe this is the hell, and we have to fix it. And we have the power to fix it, just like we have the power to fix the beauty of water by the power of our thoughts. And that is a scientific fact. So we can change this reality just by thoughts and actions alone. You could instantly stop war, hunger, abuse, all sorts of things. You could just end in a day if humanity wanted to. But to go back to Jesus, thank God, you're the Alpha and Omega. You know everything. So you created your own children. Can you imagine you having a son? And me and Trey have had this conversation. Can you imagine knowing in advance you're going to have your son or daughter, and you know that they are not going to kneel down and worship you and say, Colton, you are my Savior. So you are going to send them for eternity, which the mind of man cannot even wrap its head around what that means. Send you to hellfire for eternity because you didn't bow down to my egotistical needs. That's a sick God. I mean, that in itself is a very sick notion.
Especially if you read Dante's Inferno, Dante's Inferno, it has Satan is actually upside down, flapping his wings as fast as he can to get away from God. And all Satan wants to do is get away from God, and God holds him and punishes him in an eternity of his making, casts him into hell and won't let him go. What kind of sick person entraps you and keeps you from dying? That's torture. So your God is a torturer. He's torturing his own creation because he created Satan, because he created everything, and he won't let him go. You're so bad, I'm going to create a hell that you can't even get away from. You get to run it, but the farther you tried to get away, the deeper in you sink.
Yeah, I don't. That's another weird one too. Like the bottomless pit in Revelation, like Satan's cast into the bottomless pit, and then he's released like after 1,000 years just to get annihilated. It's like, what? It's like, why didn't you just get rid of him the first time? I don't. That's so weird. I don't get that.
And I don't get that the whole Christianity, you do good in this life and then you get to go to heaven. I always think of it as spiritual welfare. If you think about the vast course of time before you and the vast course of time after you, if you just listen to modern science, our sun is 2.3 billion years old, allegedly. You can't contemplate that. The dinosaurs lived 100 million years ago. Then you have to know that the planet will continue another 2 billion years or something. So your life really means nothing. It's zero. It's the equivalent of, if I live a good life, I get to live out eternity in paradise. It's like going to a big company, Amazon or Walmart or any of them, and you show up, you're all gung-ho, yeah, man, let's get some stuff done. And you work for 1 hour, a single hour out of your day, and then you want a check for the rest of your life. You want to sit back and do nothing because you did 1 hour's worth of work. You want to be taken care of and provided for, and you and your whole family, because you put in 1 hour worth of work. Does that seem like any kind of sense to anybody? Can anybody say, I think it's a bullshit whistle? It's stupid. Like, to believe that you spend an hour of your time and then you get the rest of your life kicked back for free? It's ridiculous. Like, anybody that believes that, I truly think there's something wrong with them. Or they can't use their critical thinking skills to say, wow, time's a whole lot longer than I thought it was.
Yeah, there is a big problem with the notion of that particular belief system that we only have one life. We're here. If we ask Jesus for forgiveness, then we are eternally saved and going to have our own mansion. We're going to have our own McMansion in the sky. And we're going to be able to live for eternity with our brothers and sisters and just be happy. There's a lot of problems with that notion. A lot of problems.
That's actually not true in the Bible. The reward system, there's actually a reward system, believe it or not, in the Bible about like your discipleship. Some will have mansions, some won't.
Well, you're right.
It's still working for 1 hour it's still working for 1 hour to get any.
Some will make it by the skin of their teeth, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And a rich man's likelihood of getting into heaven is, a camel going through a keyhole.
Well, the rich man is, what does the proverb say? The rich man's found where the poor man's found. The same hole, same ground, man. They all die, but
they all die. That's for sure.
I don't know.
These questions are something that we have to discuss as humanity to try to figure out, has this really been perpetrated on Western civilization as a control mechanism? Or is there really a system that's worthy of belief? And if you examine this system, you examine the Bible, and you ask legitimate questions, and you have legitimate conversations and discussions with the supposedly authoritative figures that are in Christian Science or the Christian universities, and most of them attempt to answer some of the things we're talking about now in a very superficial way that makes absolutely no sense. I've never heard a reasonable explanation about anything we've talked about today. So you have to look back and take a broader view and go, sure is easy to control the masses with this kind of stuff.
I think it's easy for both sides of the coin. Like the empire could use fear of God to control people, And then you got those people who go, hey man, I know how to be liberated from this. Let's make a community. And it's almost the same thing.
Well, there are two sides to that coin. I mean, you can look at some of...
But it's both indoctrination.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you can go back to what Napoleon, his writings, he said that religion is a great way to control the masses. And then, you talk about people that create their own community, that what some people would consider cults. But some cults are good and some are, not so good. If you preacher asks you to drink grape juice to see the aliens on the other side of the moon and everybody's going to get real sleepy, probably shouldn't do that. But if you're just having a spiritual aid community where everybody's together, like the Amish, I think Amish communities are wonderful. Everybody gets together and they build a barn and their community is based on faith, unlike the communities of what around here is Christianity, whether you're Baptist or Methodist.
Yeah, let me scratch what I said on that being liberated. I think you should be liberated from the fear of the government and what they use, their tactics. But religion is definitely.
For sure it is. And just the notion of saying that, like I have members of my own family, if they were to be sitting down in this conversation right now, they would be practically up in arms. Like, wow, like you can't even have a reasonable conversation about without them like wanting to come over here and letting the Jesus fire them up and stab me with a spear.
How dare you have a human thought?
Yeah, how dare you use critical thinking?
Dude, even the Bible's African of that. Like, you shouldn't just listen to a preacher. You need to go back and look at it for yourself. Like, you don't put all your stock in one person.
No, you should study everything. I mean, my gosh, when it has such profound impacts on our daily lives, man, you really need to know what the hell you're saying and what you believe.
Well, especially if you're going to claim to be a righteous person that follows the path of this book, it's probably a good start to actually read the book. If you're going to cook something and you don't know how to cook it, you should probably read the ingredients and the cooking instructions, or you're going to get a really bad end result. It's the same thing with spirituality. If you don't read the book, then you don't know how to put all the ingredients together to make that life work.
It's a very valid point. There's so many different paths and directions to go in this conversation. But the main thing and the main takeaway is we should just use our minds. We have this body, we have this intellect, we have our heart, and we know what is right. You can read that. Many religious books, doesn't necessarily have to be the Bible, but the Bible's the point of discussion today. That is a massive thing for humans to do. Think, use your mind, let it resonate in your heart. Is that true? And a lot of people that I'm even close to say, yeah, it's true for me. I feel it. I have a personal relationship with this fellow Jesus. And all right, maybe you do.
And my thing back to that charismatic Christian who was telling me, like, you don't have the Holy Spirit. Like, obviously he's indoctrinated. My thing was to him, I told him, I was like, look, as you're a Christian, you should know what discernment is. I really want you to discern what you're doing and what you're saying and actually read Corinthians and read it full. Don't give me one verse and not know the context of the whole book. Don't understand why Paul even wrote to the Corinthians. They were doing it wrong. Why don't you write to the Galatians? Because Galatians were Christians, but the Jews came and said, hey, you're not keeping Sabbath, you're not doing this. So they got mingled up again. And then they started doing Judaism all over again. And then Paul had to write a letter to the Galatians and was like, hey, come on, guys. You know what I mean? Like, so out of love, I get it. Like, he thinks out of love, he's like saving my soul. But out of love, I'm sitting here going, hey, man, I need you to really look into this because you're so gung-ho about it. And, like, you really think this is it. You haven't even, like, broadened your horizons and even looked at it.
I think there's some other offshoots that cause problems with it is that people like your friend or people like some of my friends and family, whenever they have a belief system that they believe their set of beliefs is superior to everyone else's, it makes going to war easier. It makes going to create larger divides in societies easier. It's very much easier to classify different people in different ways because you're doing it with your most fundamental belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are doing that, you are saying, hey, God, I really like you, Colton, but my Jesus, he's going to send you to hell if you don't start speaking in tongues and get the Holy Ghost. Yeah, you'll also have no problem killing me if I think I need to be, have a cow in my backyard, never eat it, and just worship it like not worship it, but think it's godlike.
Oh yeah, I've had that conversation where another Pentecostal, it was a lady, and we got in the tongue argument, and she was like, "How dare you?" She was appalled. She was like, "How dare you?" She's like, "You better pray for your soul right now." I was like, "No, I'm gonna stand firm in what I'm saying."
Yeah. Well, I think this is a big problem, and I like both of the points that y'all just said. But let's be honest. We all want to be right. So when we have this belief, and we want to think that we're on the inside, we want to think that we've got the scoop, and we can't admit to ourselves that we're wrong because this is the religion I picked. I picked it, so it has to be right. Everybody is the hero in their own story. I mean, you hear people talk or tell their lives. It's all got a little bit of embellishment to it. You always amp it up. When you first caught the fish, it was this big, then it was that big, and then it's that big. The night out on the town, it was like just a regular night, then it got bigger and bigger. I mean, you can see it with kids now with their Instagram. They're all sitting around doing nothing at a party until the phones come out, and everybody's taking pictures to look like they're having such a good life, and they're all miserable on the inside. They're traveling somewhere. Oh, let me take a selfie here. Let me do this. This will be for my Instagram. This will be for my brand. This will be this or that. I want people to think that I'm having a good time. And they get so wrapped up in that. That's their religion. That's who they think they are, and that's where they think they're going. They can't be wrong. There's dire consequences to them being wrong.
That's a very valid point, that people get so attached, their ego gets so attached to their belief system, it's very difficult for people to admit they're wrong. So if you have a belief so important, like your soul in eternity, wow, you have to be right.
You have to be right.
And if you say I'm wrong, well, I hate you and we should have a war and you should die.
Well, I would really, Gil, you come from the Holy Land biblically. I would love to know your perspective on it.
I am in the Holy Land right now.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I mean, geographically.
Alleged geographically, you come from the alleged Holy Land.
I have to respond in that way because that can cut through the chase a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Because we can go round and round and round in our mind about God and Satan, the Bible. But to cut through the chase is to break through the patterns of thought that we have been programmed to think, that keeps us going round and round and round and round in searching and seeking for truth, and actually never really finding it, because we're relying on external sources for our information. The Bible is one of them. So when you tell me I come from the Holy Land, of course, you also come from the Holy Land, though. Because the Holy Land is not a geographical place. It is a state of consciousness. It is a state of awareness. The key ingredient here to understand is that we lost that awareness. We're not aware. We're not aware of who we are, and therefore we're not aware of what's really going on here. So it's very easy to fool us with all kinds of stories. Mythologies is a wonderful thing, because mythology is metaphoric. It's a storytelling that is hiding within it, encoded in it, a truth. But if you read the storyline, and you believe that storyline, without really looking deeper into the truth behind the story, that's encoded behind the story, then you will believe in God and Satan. And you will believe in the battle of good and evil, because that's what we've all been experiencing here for eons of evolution. And it's time for us, from my perspective, to awaken from that dream within a dream within a dream. And how do we do that? To understand that we are in the Holy Land right now. But to understand that, we have to raise awareness. We have to become aware. And the question is, what are we? Where are we? And who are we really becoming? And why did we believe in such stories for so long, to a point of which they became our belief systems, our way we think, our way we feel, and therefore our way we behave, and we justify it. We justify killing, we justify raping, we justify all kinds of behaviors that are the byproduct of such thought processes. And it is all, if you really look at it and raise awareness, you'll start to see the constellation of truth behind all of those mythologies. Those are points of divine intervention. So the question is, who wrote the stories, and who is the one who created the divine intervention for us to really look deeper and suddenly find the truth that is behind the story? Question is, what are we looking for? A story or the moral of the story? Are we looking to tell another story, or are we looking to realize the moral of the story and let the story go? The story is not important. What's important is the moral of the story. What's our point? What's the point? Where is the point of truth? Why is it so hard for us to really, really know the truth?
Okay, I don't mean to stop you there, but I have to ask, if we're looking for the moral of the story, then what's the moral of some of the biblical stories? Let's just go to the book of Deuteronomy, for instance, at the Battle of Ai, where they're stabbing pregnant women in the bellies and throwing infants off the city walls. What is the moral of that story, and what does that say about the God? Where's the moral of it?
That really shows us our story. You know, we must start to understand the moral of the story, but we have to realize the overarching story. Those Bibles are the Brown Book. We have two books. We have the Brown Book, and that's the history of humankind, of the earthly human. And when you read it, it's full of bloodshed, it's full of war, it's full of struggle, pain, suffering, and it's full of fun and pleasure and celebrations, and it is wonderful. But it is the book of duality. There's another book. But this book, you cannot find externally. If you want to read that book, there is only one direction, within. You see, in all of those Bibles, there is something that is repeating itself over and over and over again, and it's truly amazing to see the stubbornness of the human and the ego to be so impressed with the story and miss those points. And what I'm pointing to, for example, is in every Bible you'll see it. God, Jesus, Buddha, whatever it is you believe in. The kingdom of heaven is within you. God is within you. Now, we keep missing that. It's easy to miss, because no one really, at this point, we became so entranced with the hypnosis of the stories that no one really wants to do the work internally. You see, if you want to know about God, where are you going to go?
You would hope inside first, to see how you even feel about anything. Your current state of mind would be a good start.
That's right. But still, people go to the Bible. People go to church. People go to the teacher, the guru, the master, whatever it is.
But that's because that's easy, though. It's just like, why would you put your kid in homeschool, which they're going to get a much better education, when I can ship them off to public school and not have to worry about anything? And who cares if they get a good education or not? It's much easier to say, well, this is already there and it's kind of readily available. Let me skim through this passage or that passage, or go now on YouTube. What's a good message for me to, what's the
positive motivator for the day.
Yeah. What's the one your mom? The quotes by Jesus or?
Oh yeah, she has a couple of different books that most of those type belief systems, they don't read the book itself. They read some other pastor's interpretation of something, and that makes them feel good. And I like what your point is, Gil, about the biblical stories. It's not so much the stories that are really in the Bible, because people only have a cursory overview or understanding of what those stories even are. It's the story of we continue to live in this cyclical spin that we're not breaking. We continue to look at war and bloodshed and treating our neighbors poorly as okay, as, oh, it's something we've always done. You hear it whenever we had the conflict in the Middle East here in the United States. It's a pretty common statement. Oh, they've been fighting for thousands of years. Just let them kill themselves. I was like, what? I go, what did you just say? I mean, it's a shocking sort of belief system that why would they not think that way if they've been raised and brought up in this program and propaganda to believe that that's a normal state of affairs, that those aren't the chosen people. It's okay for them. If I'm not wrong, it seems like that was your point.
Yeah, it's that too. It's a part of it. But the point is that why are we, like you said, Trey, so lazy? Why do we always choose the easy way, which is letting someone else tell us the truth, or reading it somewhere in a book, or go and look on the internet and search out there? Why? Because it's very easy. And what is the force that is psychologically constantly engineering us to think that way, to behave that way? What is that? The God of fear. The God of fear. You know, it's much easier to stick with the program because we're already accustomed to it. It's an automation. It's easy.
Well, you can see in the book of Genesis where you would want to stay in the program, don't go to the tree of good and evil, or don't eat of the tree of knowledge, rather. You don't want to do that. That would be keeping you in the program. That is the laziness. Let this divine being tell you what to do. Don't go find out for yourself. So we're not only just lazy by nature, we're told from, I mean, around here, you get indoctrinated with the Bible from the time you can walk and talk, and you're told how great it is. But then if you read it, God didn't want you to know the truth. He wanted you to just read that positive message or feel that positive message that he was giving you. So like you said, it's not necessarily that people are lazy. It's that we've been indoctrinated to think that way, and they can't have an original thought. Most people are just incapable of original thought. They can't do it.
And you make a very strong point with that, Trey, is propaganda and the programming from such a young age. We're just throwing these blinders and blankets and onion peels, everything over our mind and hearts nonstop since the moment we are born into these societies that have such propaganda that prevents us from exploring inside. You know, I've been to a lot of different Christian churches. I've been to Catholic boarding school, went to Baptist school growing up, and every denomination. And wow, just wow. I've never had the experience of them saying, you need to look inside. You need to explore. You have the answers inside of you. Everything that you need to know, you already know. It's there. You know whenever you are not treating someone else right. You know when you're not treating yourself right. You know when you're not treating your body right. You know when you're not treating everybody around you that you love and care about right. You know that. You don't need a book to tell you that. Any book. You just know.
Well, that's kind of stuff is as simple as the golden rule. You don't do things to others that you don't want them to do to you.
That's very true. And I think it just goes down to the simple thing of all the answers are inside yourself. And if we would just start to realize that as a human family, we understand that all of a sudden we can rip off these blankets and blinders and see each other for what we are. We're human brothers and sisters. We don't need to classify each other in these different realms of, oh, they believe this way, they're this financial class, they're of this intelligence level, they're this professional or not. All those things just need to be wiped out. And especially in the United States, what's the first thing you do when you meet somebody? You ask them, what do you do? It's not, who are you? Who are you? Who am I meeting? It's, what do you do? You instantly have to classify them and place these judgments on. Are they in such a classification where I'd want to spend a moment with them because of their finances or because of their professional ideas? Everything is separation. All of these books, all of it is designed to create massive separation when in fact we're not separated at all.
And for us to really find that place that unifies us, there's only one direction to go: inwardly. But that's in every Bible. And that's the funny thing. That's why I'm speaking about mythology as being a story that covers up actually a deeper truth that's hidden right there. But it's hidden out in the open. See, the greatest trick of the god of fear, which is Satan, by the way, it's the same entity. It's the same force that wrote all of those stories, most of them. But to get to that point that he's hiding there, that was the divine intervention from the real God, the God of love, yeah, which is not relative to Satan, no, because it is complete within and unto itself. It has no opposition. That's why it knows the truth. But when you come to that point, suddenly you start to see a constellation coming out at you. This is holographic vision. But to develop holographic vision, so you can start to see reality instead of perceiving illusions constantly because you're projecting out there, instead of injecting in here, and suddenly you can open the telescope and microscope of consciousness. You can open the portal. Now you can start to have your own direct relationship with God. You want to know about God? Ask God. You want to know about spirit? Ask spirit. You want to know about truth? Ask truth.
You don't need an intermediary.
Exactly.
I don't need to go to my preacher or pastor or guru. I don't need to say, hey, Gil, can you pray for me to see if God will talk to me later? I don't think so.
I remember there's this thing that Trey, I don't know if you remember this, man, but I remember I was talking about God too, and I did something. I was like, yeah, God kind of led me that way. And you're like, did he or did you drive yourself there? Just simple as that, because you hear that a lot. Like, oh, God, God's going to open the door for me. I'm like, is he, or are you just going there to go get that job?
Yeah,
As simple as that. Just go there and ask and get an application.
Yeah, it's that simple.
God provide. Or you'll just go and provide for your family because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
Yeah, I think we do kind of.
Yeah, we overcomplicate everything. And like Gil says, if you got a question, ask. Ask yourself, does that resonate with me? Is that right with me?
No.
And if it's not, then what is it? Is it my ego telling me something is wrong because it's out of fear or out of something that I'm not accustomed to? I mean, you have to use your critical thinking and your gut too, because sometimes what we think is our intuition is actually our ego creating fear. So there are a lot of different ways to be a self-explorer. You have to be honest with yourself at the same time.
The first step, I think, is you have to be honest with yourself. But I like what Gil said, is look inside yourself. But then not everyone has that ability to do that. I think when somebody asks somebody something, like what I think and I know you do more of, is not giving someone the answer, is you show them the path that they can find the answer for themselves. Because we can't think of everything. I mean, anybody that's tried to build a house or just done renovations on their kitchen or anything, like, oh, I should have done that better. Or you go back a year later, like, oh, that would have been nice, or that would have been nice. Because you can't think of everything. So it's nice to have a community of people like we have here, and like we're trying to bring to an online presence, of people to get together and have these conversations, because that's where it starts. We can't think of everything, and it's nice to have other people's perspective. Even if we don't agree with that certain perspective, we can still learn something from that. And I also don't think it's bad in the Christian communities where they ask somebody to pray for them, because there are power, and there is power in numbers. When you look and you want something to change, and you get somebody else on board to get to change, and somebody else, that's how all change starts. It starts from a singularity point and it expands from there. So asking somebody to pray for you, I don't think is a bad idea. I think that's saying, look, this is the path that I want to go down, and I know thoughts are things, because when I visualize something, it tends to happen. So if you help me and you're a true friend and you really want me to succeed, then you don't have a problem giving me a little bit of time. Like, there's not everything, we can't do everything on the planet, but one thing we can do is be nice. Like, it's not that hard, especially if somebody's only asking you for no monetary gain, nothing, just a little couple seconds in their day. Man, I'm trying to do this. Would you just keep me in your thoughts? Just hope I succeed is really what I attribute to somebody saying, pray for me, is, man, I'm going down this, and I would appreciate it if you would have some influence on it, because we're all going down this human path together. And if you can lend me your support here, then I'll hopefully can re-lend you my support somewhere else. And I don't think there's anything bad in that.
No, I think that's a wonderful thing. I do think there's something not good about asking someone else as an intermediary to get to God.
Now that I agree. I think that is bad.
That's what I was getting at with that statement. Guys, that was a fantastic conversation. That was so much to digest, so many myriad, thousands of different paths this conversation could go on. But that's a fantastic starting point for a lot of people that are just starting to question, what is wrong? Like, why are we believing certain things that aren't resonating with me? Where do we start? How do we get there? Where are we going? Well, it all starts right here. And it also starts in some of our videos. Go watch them. They're fun if you are so inclined. And thank y'all for joining us. And we'll see you next time.
Have a good day.